Welcome back. Life in the Fast Lane, Week 2 edition here for Daytona once again. We were on the big restrictor plate track last week, folks. Now we're on a road course roval, if you will, for the second race of the NASCAR season this Sunday, February 21st. And we are here each and every week on WagerTalk TV. Moving the show, by the way, if you haven't noticed, to Fridays here in the near future because the sports books are afraid of these two guys I'm about to bring in, and they don't put the odds up until the weekend nowadays. And that's Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com, and Rocky Atkinson, sportsmemo.com. And I'm, of course, Steve Merril, also at wagertalk.com. And Andy, let me start with you. You know, we talked about how the head-to-head matchup odds weren't up last Wednesday for the Daytona 500. We thought maybe things would be different this week, but sports books are dragging. We saw some go up Thursday afternoon this week. Most of the big offshore boys are still not up as we head into the weekend. So we're going to start doing this show on Fridays, guys. So look for it on Friday evenings and into the weekend. It'll have some nice, fresh content for you for each and every NASCAR race. And we don't have any Wednesday races this year, by the way. They're all Saturdays and mostly all Sundays. Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com. We bring you in first. What was your big takeaway from Daytona 500? I know you don't release head-to-head matchups on the restrictor plate tracks, and I think anybody that watched the race sees why. But nonetheless, still very entertaining. Andy, what was your big takeaway from the weekend?
It was a standard restrictor plate race. Exciting, terrifying. I know these races are you have some ups and downs because it can get really boring when they're just going round and round in single file, and then they have the big crash, and it gets a little scary. I worry about these guys sometimes. We've seen Ryan Newman in a horrific accident, and it's not fun to bet on. And to be honest, I'm just wondering what the upside is to these restrictor plate races. That honestly, that was my big takeaway. When we got done, it was exciting to see Michael McDowell win. He deserves it. I mean, he's been unbelievable on these types of tracks. He's well loved in the sport. But I just kind of wonder, at what point do we say, why are we racing these types of races? What's the upside? That was my big takeaway, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we always agree that, you know, cautions, basically bring more cautions at the end there. And I saw a stat going in that 14 of the last 16 Daytona 500s had a caution, Rocky, in the last 10 laps or less. Not a surprise. They always wreck each other. And this year, I don't know if it technically happened or not because it did because we got the caution on the final lap. But they were running pretty good going up to that. And then two teammates take each other out. And I said coming into the show last week, Team Penske was my pick. Blaney, Keselowski, Logano. And it was Keselowski and Logano going for the win there. They take each other out. But I have to give Andy Lang props. His first word out of his mouth when we talked Daytona 500 last week here on the show was Michael McDowell. And he went off at 66-1, 80-1 at some spots, as high as 100-1 at some other spots. And Rocky, you mentioned him as well as one of your guys to watch, especially as a long shot. Rocky, I saw you went 7-3 in your head-to-head matchups on Twitter for free, so be sure to follow him at Rocketman Sports on Twitter. Rocky, what were your takeaways with Daytona 500? Anything that maybe we can use in the future when they go back to Daytona or the two races at Talladega?
Like you said, I didn't release any members picks this past week for the Daytona 500. I did put up head-to-head matchups, and I'm thinking to myself, Steven probably going, that fella is crazy right now to put that out there and possibly all of them get big one, you know. But fortunately, they went 7-3, 70% for free right there on Twitter. Daytona 500, exciting race once again. I think that's why they keep bringing it back, Andy, is Daytona and Talladega is just so exciting. It keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole race, especially when they get 3 or 4 wide. We had the first big one with less than 15 laps into the race, took out multiple cars. As we said, anything can happen in this race, including a lot of first-time winners. And to as Michael McDowell got to win this past weekend. Congratulations to Andy making that call. Like you said, Steve, I think it was 66-1 or better, possible long shot winner, and he came through for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, what's kind of funny about Daytona and these restrictor plate tracks is we talk about we don't put out head-to-head matchup best bets. You know, we had some opinions. Rocky went 7-3 for free on Twitter. Rocketman Sports is where you can follow him. But we talk about how inconsistent it is. Yet Denny Hamlin was going to be the first guy ever to win 3 straight, and he was in the running to do so for most of the race. Logano and Keselowski, 2 of my top picks, they were basically in contention to win until they take each other out. Yet Michael McDowell, as much of a long shot as he was, he had the second best average finish the last 4 races at Daytona after Denny Hamlin going into the race this past week. And we had that up here on Wager Talk TV. That was on the screen last week as we we're doing the show. best average finish last 4 times at Daytona, and McDowell was second only to Denny Hamlin. So, in hindsight, it wasn't as much of an upset maybe as a lot of people thought. And I've got some interesting numbers on him that we'll get into when we get to the road course, but he actually is a decent road course racer as well. So he could be a guy on the radar once again this week, as crazy as that sounds. But before we get to the road course race at Daytona, let's finish up the restrictor plate recap here. And Andy, last year you came up with a concept of the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award, which is basically the biggest unforced error, the biggest mishap, silliness of the race. And we decided this year to put it up on Twitter for the viewers to vote. And we're going to do that each week going forward. Of course, WagerTalk, at WagerTalk on Twitter is where you can follow it. And then we retweet it as well. Rocket Man Sports, as I mentioned, Steve Merril, 2 R's, 1 L, and then Bump Sports. Andy Lang is Bump Sports on Twitter. Andy, this is funny. I think 8% of the votes agreed with who you and I voted for, and it didn't win. But Andy, quickly go over the 4 nominees and maybe some quick thoughts on where you were with those.
Well, we had Derek Cope, 62-year-old Derek Cope, who cuts a tire on lap 3 on the tribute to Dale Earnhardt. Right. And what was just amazing about that is Derek Cope won this race because Dale Earnhardt cut a tire and lost a tire in that race. So I don't know what he's doing out there at 62 years old. It was just ridiculous. I personally voted for Kaz Grala's brake fire. He comes into the pits. His brakes are actually on. There are flames shooting out of his car. They stick a fire extinguisher under there, put it out, and then they send him back out there. The crew chief is like, go, get out there. And not surprisingly, he has no brakes. He has to come back in. His car's on fire again. So that was good. Bubba's crew chief gets ejected in the first race of the season, which I equate to, it's like if you leave your ID at home on your 21st birthday, like it's your first time you go out to the bars legally and you get booted because you leave your ID at home. And then the winner is NASCAR's meteorologist. And this year we have trophies. So congratulations to NASCAR's meteorologists. They don't start the race early. They wait until the scheduled time and they get all of a few laps in before it rains, which everybody knew was coming. Like everybody knew the rain was coming, and yet they still decided to get just a couple laps in before they go for the rain delay.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned not starting early, because as I'm doing all my college and pro basketball work on Sunday, I'm scrambling because I'm thinking to myself, they're going to start this race a couple hours early if they're smart, and I wanted to get everything done so I could focus on the NASCAR and check the odds and whatnot. And I guess being the Super Bowl of NASCAR, the 500, they couldn't start it early. But, yeah, between the red flag and the weather, they barely got any of the race in at the start. By the way, Kaz Grala, Andy and I voted for that. He got 8%. So if you take out Andy and my votes, I think only about 2 other people in the entire poll voted for it, which I thought was hilarious, because that's who both Andy and I, who I consider somewhat sharp when it comes to NASCAR, voted for. Bubba's crew chief got 16%. Kaz got 8%. Derek Cope got 28%, Rocky, and I was happy to see that because Andy explained it really well. And I have a feeling had we done the show first and explained the backstory, that would have won in a landslide because it was just too much to make up. The only reason Cope is in the race is because the winners get in for life. So he doesn't have to qualify as a 62-year-old. He won't race another race this year. And it was on lap 3. And like Andy said, the only reason he got into this race is because he won that Daytona 500 in 1990 because Earnhardt cut a tire. So I probably should have changed my vote to that the more I'm talking about it. But Rocky, before we move on, I had to ask you, which of those 4 did you choose this past week in the poll?
I actually chose the Derek Cope one. I missed I missed a Grala brake fire. I fell asleep, so I missed that. So I
think a lot of people might have. Yeah, so that's interesting, Derek, Rocky, because that might be exactly why it didn't get more votes. Now that you said that, I think that's exactly what it was, because it was spectacular.
But Cope reckoned on the third lap of the race. The announcers mentioned he won this race back in 1990, 31 years ago. A lot of these drivers were not old when won it. And he's bringing out the first caution. So I voted for him.
Yeah, it's Andy. I was thinking we should do 2 awards each week, who the voters vote for and then who we consensus. And I was like, well, Grala would have won it because there's 2 of 3 of us, but I might be changing my vote here on the show to Cope as well. So that might be the runner-up. And it was the runner-up in the poll, by the way. So it did come in second to the weather. But, yeah, drivers weren't even alive yet when he was running last. And there's a lot of 62-year-olds that shouldn't be driving on a 45-mile-per-hour local road, let alone a super speedway with restrictor plates. So, That is a pretty damn good nominee right there. But I regress. Let's move on to the road course here. It's the only time in the history of sports, I think, we could stay at the exact same venue and not have more of a difference between the event within 1 week. I mean, they're going on a track where the top speed last week hit 199 point something miles per hour. They kept them under 200 miles an hour with the restrictor plate, but now they're going to be on mostly a road course. They do get back on the half oval there for a little bit, but they don't go nearly the speeds or the drafting like we see in the 500. But this is only the second time, guys, that we have ever had a race at Daytona that's on the road course. We saw it last year during the COVID era, and it went over pretty well. And, of course, we also have the Charlotte Rovals as well, which is half oval, half road course. Andy, I'll start with you. I mean, I guess we're going to be looking at both the Charlotte Roval and the one race here last year. Also have to keep in mind that the Bud Clash, the shootout last Tuesday before the 500, was this same format. So we did see about 20-some cars, and you got to wonder how much of an edge those guys have having run here last week when half the field didn't. And also just Watkins Glen and Sonoma as well, I guess, Andy, the two regular road courses. Andy Lang, big picture takeaway for this week and maybe someone you're looking at.
Yeah, when I'm doing my handicapping, I really am not looking at Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Both of those races have very different pit strategies. And a lot of the success when you're at Sonoma or Watkins Glen is when do the cautions come out? Are you doing a 2-stop or a 3-stop strategy? And there's a lot of luck involved with that. Obviously, you see a lot of the cream rises to the top on those. But I'm going to be handicapping this race looking at Daytona's road course and the Roval. And you're going to see a lot of the big names are up at the top, just like they normally are at other tracks. But there are some, I guess, road course specialists that I'm not going to say that they're specialists at like the Roval and the Daytona road course. I'm not going to give them the upper, the bump up in ratings. We remember Marcus Ambrose. He was average at best on the 1.5 miles, but then you got a road course and he was like the betting favorite. I think guys like that, I just don't put ahead of some of the normal drivers, and I'm going to be looking at momentum. So I'm looking at guys who finished the year strong last year, and I'm going to be looking at Daytona and Roval, and Sonoma and Watkins Glen, not really going to be in much of my handicapping.
That's interesting, Andy, because Rocky, I definitely am looking at overall road course stats, and there's a couple of guys that jump out, obviously. I'm sure you guys are going to mention them here in a few minutes, but it is a different animal. I mean, because they are someone on an oval. Half the race is basically on a regular track, but I still think the passing is pretty much done on that road course, and I think the road course specialists still have an edge here. Before I get to Rocky, your thoughts on this, just want to remind the viewers out there, both Rocky and Andy do have NASCAR best bets ready to go for this weekend. Andy Lang is loaded right now at WagerTalk.com. Rocky's going to have them up this weekend at SportsMemo.com. And we have a very special promo. Last week we did the discount for the full season because we wanted you to get on board. I know many of you weren't ready to make that commitment for a full season yet. So we came up with a little something different for this week. And it's a fantastic offer. You're basically getting their picks for free and then some. Because when you buy one of their NASCAR packages or both of their NASCAR packages at WagerTalk.com for Andy, SportsMemo.com for Rocky, you got contact customer support, you're getting 150% back in wager bucks. So whatever you spend, you're getting 150%, 1.5 times more back, which you can use on any other capper, any other sport, including Rocky, myself, and Andy. So basically, you're getting the NASCAR for free and then some. It's a great incentive to try their best bets, and we're doing this because this is the first real race this season. We don't mess with the restrictor plate tracks, as we talked about. We mess with the road courses and the regular ovals, and that's what we've got this week. A very bettable, a very winnable race here from a handicapping perspective. Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com, Rocky Atkinson, SportsMemo.com. Get their NASCAR best bets for this week, and any NASCAR package, get 150% back in wager bucks, which you can use on any sport, any capper on either site. Fantastic offer right now when you get the NASCAR best bets this weekend. With that said, Rocky, what are your thoughts on this race and maybe somebody you're looking at here at the Roval at Daytona?
Well, here in Daytona Road Course, last year I was blindsided because I thought it was going to be more like Watkins Glen or Sonoma, your traditional road course race, and found out that it was actually like the Charlotte Roval a little bit more. You're going up on the bank some, and we got some stretches where you're going a little bit faster there. I'm going to handicap it a little bit different than Andy. I am going to use Watkins Glen and Sonoma in my handicapping. I'm also going to use track history here. We've only had one race that we can actually look at, which was last year. We did have the, I think it's called the Bush Clash last week, 20 or 21 drivers that ran in it. And I'm going to look at the Charlotte Roval stuff, but I'm also going to look at Watkins Glen and Sonoma and factor that in as well. One guy I'm looking at, and I think this is obvious choice here, and this is the guy I'm picking to win this race this weekend, is Chase Elliott, the defending NASCAR champion. Elliott, he won here last year in the first race on the road course here in Daytona. He's also the hottest driver the past 3 races. He has 2 wins, 3 top 10 finishes, an average finish of 1.3. Over the past 10 races, he has 3 wins, 8 top 10 finishes, and an average finish of 7th. On road courses, Elliott is only behind Kaz Grala, of all people, as he has an average finish. Kaz Grala has run 1 time on road courses, and so he's leading. I think he finished 7th. Chase Elliott, his average finish on road courses is 8.9, which, like I said, is second best among all drivers. He has 5 wins, 6 top 5 finishes, 8 top 10 finishes in 12 road course races. He's also starting on the pole for this race. So I'm definitely looking at Chase Elliott this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. He's been dominant on these road courses and the Rovals in particular. So whether you're using the road courses or not, Elliott's on your list either way because he's good on both of them. And keep in mind, he was about a couple feet away from winning that clash last week. And anybody didn't see what happened last Tuesday, Elliott's leading with about 3 to 4 laps to go. Ryan Blaney, who was the only other guy other than Truex over the last 2-3 seasons, last 8 actually, Martin Truex and Chase Elliott have won 7 of the last 8 road Roval races. The only other guy to win one during that span is Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney passes Chase Elliott with about 2 laps to go last week, and then they wreck each other, and Kyle Busch comes out of nowhere from like a second and a half behind to win. So it was either Elliott or Blaney that should have won that race last week. So Chase Elliott, Andy, has really been unstoppable. Seems pretty obvious. And, whenever something's obvious for me as a handicapper, I'm not a big fan of it. But with these road courses, we don't get the randomness as we do a lot of times on the restrictor plate tracks. And there's not as much passing for obvious reasons. So if Chase Elliott's out there in front, he's obviously going to be one of the 2 or 3 contenders. 2 to 1 to win outright, though. Hard to say there's a lot of value there, Andy. 2 to 1. I saw Truex Jr. like at 3.5 to 1 this week. So the odds makers are looking at a lot of what we're talking about here, Andy. What are your thoughts on some drivers to look at?
Truex should have so many more of these wins, and the guy recently just can't get out of his own way. He had like penalties and spins, and I think he raced his way from the back towards the front like 3 different times, and still just isn't there. And I would love to put money on him, but it's like you can't trust that guy. He's like a driving stubbed toe. You just can't get out of the way. So I can't put money on him. I will say sneaky guy William Byron on the Daytona Road Course race and the 2 Rovals, 3rd best average finish at 6.7. I imagine he's kind of flying under some people's radars. He's a guy I will look at. And his teammate Bowman averages 7.3. He seems to be much better on these road course Roval types than on the 1.5 miles. He seems to be a little bit more consistent. So might be looking at those 2 Hendrick guys.
Yeah, and I love, digging a little deeper because although I said this isn't as random as a restrictor plate track, we have seen some guys in the 10-21 to win on road courses over the years. There are some guys that come from it used to be like top 10 only, but now guys from the middle of the pack find ways to get it done too. And if we get a little bit off pit sequence as well, that's when you can get really the odds shooken up. Earlier I mentioned the 150% back in wager bucks, by the way, for either Andy Lang at WagerTalk.com or Rocky Atkinson at SportsMemo.com. Get either or both of their NASCAR best bets for this weekend, and you get 150% bonus wager bucks. Basically your money back and then another 50%. So it's an incredible value. I also might have something on this race. I'm a little more selective. I don't always have stuff every week in NASCAR, but I do follow it closely, obviously, as you can tell. And I've got an all-sports special for anybody that goes to my page at WagerTalk.com. 3 days, all sports, basketball, college, and pro, plus any NASCAR that I have as well is included. Fast Lane 39. Now, obviously, that promo code is nowhere else but right here on this show. It's a special thank you to all the viewers out there. If you want to try my number 1 ranked college basketball, 43-19 on the season, you get that along with the NBA and also any NASCAR release. Fast Lane 39 for Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. 3 days all sports for just $39. Fantastic value at WagerTalk.com. Fast Lane 39 for that promo. Rocky, a guy I'll throw out real quick before I get another pick from you, because I doubt you're going to use this guy, is Michael McDowell. You know, we talked about how he wasn't a huge sleeper on the plate track at Daytona, but guess what? He's not a huge sleeper either on road courses. In fact, he's had over 300 and some starts in his career. His only win was last week. But I went back over the last 2+ years and looked at all of his races. We're talking about a couple hundred races. He has been top 10 in 24% of the plate and road courses, 3% of all the other tracks. And he's been 62% of the time he's top 20 at the road course or plate tracks versus just 27% on all the other tracks. So, by the way, viewers, Michael McDowell exactly 66-1 again at a lot of sports books this week. Wouldn't it be something if he wins it? But Rocky, not sure if he's on your list or not. Who's someone else you're looking at?
Well, I'm looking at Denny Hamlin here. Hamlin finished second last year here on the road course here in Daytona. Over the past 3 races, Hamlin has 2 top 10 finishes, an average finish of 6.7. So that's that momentum that we're talking about. Andy and I keep talking about from last year, beginning of this year. Over the past 10 races, Hamlin has 1 win, 5 top 10 finishes, average finish of 9.6. Hamlin has 1 win, 9 top 5 finishes, 14 top 10s in 32 road course races. His average finish 16.4 on road courses, and he starts 4th for this race. So he's going to be up there at the front. Look out for Hamlin this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up starting position, because I've always said one of the most overrated stats in all of sports is qualifying in NASCAR on the regular tracks. It just doesn't seem to matter. But in the road course in Formula One, which is kind of like a road course basically, as you know, Andy, it is a different animal, and it's very important to be in that top 10. Andy, how much are you going to look at starting positions this week versus other races? And then maybe there's another guy you're looking at as well.
Yeah, it's really important. And we talked about daily fantasy last week, and we talked about selecting guys that start in the back and move forward. And Michael McDowell was just a daily fantasy champ. He won the race, but he also moved up 17 positions. Alex Bowman starts in 36th. He's going to move up. You know that. Ryan Blaney, he's in 27th. He's going to move up. You know that. So those are some guys to maybe put in your fantasy lineups. But it's really, really tough over the course of a race to move forward, because not only do you have to move forward, but the guys like Chase Elliott and Michael McDowell and Hamlin and Harvick, they can get out in front. So what you're really depending on is to move up and then get a caution, and then move up some more and get a caution. So the guys in the back are really, really dependent on cautions coming out at times. Does it happen? Yeah, most races it does happen, but they're up against it. On mile and a half, I'm with you, Steve. Qualifying means nothing. Starting position means absolutely nothing. It's how do you do during the race? You can gain 20 spots within 10 laps at, Texas, Atlanta, any of those. But this, yes, you do have to look at starting position. That being said, I'm certainly not going to be shy about staying away from Blaney and, Bowman and some of these guys in the back. It's something to keep in the back of your head.
Yeah, and Rocky, who's another guy you're looking at here? Maybe I don't know if you want to get into a long shot or not, if you think there's even any long shots that are worth playing. But as Andy said, qualifying and really not qualify, but starting position in this race is something to keep an eye on, and it makes it tougher in daily fantasy to pick one of those guys to come from the back. Who's someone else you're looking at?
Well, in road course racing, I think starting position is definitely important, but as far as Daytona Road Course and the Charlotte Roval, I don't think it's as important as, say, Watkins Glen and Sonoma, because that's a full road course race. This actually has where you can get some speed going. So, but I think it's still definitely important. Another guy I'm looking at, Martin Truex Jr. Andy's already mentioned him here. He finished 3rd here last year at this race. He has 4 win, top 5 finishes, 17 top 10 finishes in 32 road courses in his road course races in his career. He has an average finish of 13.6 on road courses. He's starting back in 21st for this one, but I'm expecting him to make his way to the front pretty quickly. A long shot to win this one, I'm thinking about Joey Logano. And when we say Joey Logano, you usually don't think long shot. Usually he's single digits or something. I've seen him as high as 22-1 to win this race. But he finished fifth here last year in this race. Over the past 3 races, he's second best among all drivers with an average finish of 6th. Past 10 races, he's been solid with an average finish of 8.5, which is also second best among all drivers. He has 1 win, 6 top 5s, 13 top 10s, and 26 road course races in his career. Average finish of 14.4 on road course races. So looking at Joey Logano a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like first thing you said long shots, thinking the same thing. We don't think of Joey Logano, recent Cup champion, as a long shot, but 20-1 and higher to most sports books. And he's starting 11th, so kind of in that middle range right now. And he's only about 9,400 at DraftKings. He's on about 8th on the board there. By the way, daily fantasy, at least at DraftKings, Martin Truex is 11,000. Chase Elliott is 10.7. Ryan Blaney 10.4. And then the fourth guy we haven't brought up really could be considered a road course ringer, AJ Allmendinger, guys. And Andy, I'll get your thoughts there. He did not run last week, and he's a guy that does have oval experience, though, and he actually got into the chase a few years ago, I believe, by winning. I think it was the Watkins-Klin race. What are your thoughts on somebody like that? It's not just a complete ringer. It is somebody with oval experience in AJ Allmendinger.
I'll go ahead and do my free play right now. I don't buy the AJ Allmendinger experience. Yes, he's been a road course specialist, but he's also been in much better equipment. And DraftKings has William Byron at even money over AJ Allmendinger. I will happily take William Byron over AJ Allmendinger. Between the last 3 races, Daytona and Roval, I said, Byron third best average finish with a 6.7 average finish. His last year in NASCAR was 2018, finished 7th at the Roval, 38th at Sonoma, 15th at Watkins Glen in a much better car. This year he's starting 34th in the Matt Collig racing team, which is an Xfinity team. And he's going to be racing in a NASCAR race. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy that the road course specialist translates to the Roval, because it's not all road course racing. You have to get out on the Daytona track, and I don't buy that car has nearly the horsepower handling over the course of a race that William Byron does. I cannot believe William Byron is even money and Allmendinger is a favorite, especially when Allmendinger is starting back in 34th. Yes, he's going to be good through the corners, but equipment means something, especially on these. So Allmendinger, I cannot believe he is that high in daily fantasy. I will not be using him there, and I will be betting against him with William Byron.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder that this qualifying order, we didn't dig into, but it's a qualifying metric based on race finish, points, positions, fastest laps. So that's why Chase Elliott is first. McDowell is starting second because of his strong run last week. So, there again, it's 66-1. He could definitely be considered a sleeper. He'll be out front. Not sure he's a great fantasy play, though, because as Andy said, you're not going to get those points gained like you did with them last week. But, Andy, you bring up a great point about the equipment for Allmendinger. I totally agree with you. That's not the same kind of car he had before he was with Petty Motorsports and those other teams. And also, and that was the team he was with, I believe, was the 43, the old Bubba Wallace car when he won a few years ago and got into the chase. Keep in mind also that it is half oval, like Rocky's pointed out, so it's not a true road course. And I think that's a great way to handicap some of these matchups where you get the big-name road course guys and lesser machines. So Andy is fading Allmendinger there with William Byron. He's getting even money doing it as his free play here on the show. Don't forget, if you want Andy's best bets for this weekend, they're locked and loaded. He's got 2 strong head-to-head matchups right now on his page at WagerTalk.com. You get those plays, and then you also get 150% back in wager bucks. It's like getting the plays for free and then some. You can use those wager bucks on any sport, any capper, anytime at WagerTalk.com. Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com. 2 strong NASCAR head-to-head best bets right now with a 150% bonus of wager bucks included. Don't miss out. Andy hit nearly 70% last year in NASCAR on his head-to-head best bets. Rocky, let me get a final takeaway from you. Maybe anybody else you want to talk about. Also, maybe a free head-to-head matchup. Before I do so, though, I want to point out Jamie McMurray has the best average finish at the 3 Roval races at Charlotte. I don't believe he's running in this race this week, and he did run last week. Kyle Larson has the second-best driver rating in the 2 races he ran on the Charlotte Roval before he missed last year. He's in a decent ride now in the 5-car, obviously, with Hendrick. Someone we haven't brought up, but that's a name we're going to be talking about a lot this year in many tracks, is Kyle Larson. He's a dirt small track specialist. Even though he's known as 2 Mile Kyle, he's actually a really good small track guy. So he could be a little bit of a sleeper as well. But Rocky, throw me out something else, maybe a free head-to-head as well.
Well, I haven't seen any head-to-head matchup odds yet, but they do have the drivers matched up against each other. So I think we'll get an underdog here. I like Chris Buescher over Bubba Wallace. In 8 road course races, Bubba has not had a win, no top 5 finishes, and no top 10 finishes. His average finish is 26.8 on road courses. The only thing about this matchup is Bubba starts in the 10th spot while Buescher is back in 30th. But with this being similar to the Charlotte Roval, we have the oval involved, so the drivers have more of an opportunity to pass, unlike the traditional road course races like Watkins Glen and Sonoma. So I'm not as much worried about the starting spot. So I'm looking to play Buescher over Bubba Wallace in the head-to-head matchup this weekend.
Yeah, and Rocky, like you said, the odds on that particular one aren't available because a lot of the offshores haven't posted yet as we head into the weekend. But you're probably going to get a pretty good price because of that discrepancy in the starting position. Because, yeah, Bubba's 10th, Buescher is 30th. And by the way, Andy mentioned Michael McDowell. Rocky also mentioned him last week, and Chris Buescher was one of his long shots at Daytona that he mentioned had run well there. I know this isn't really a restrictor plate track, but they are still on the big oval for part of it. And Buescher has been a very good restrictor plate track racer. So I like him a little bit more here on the Rovals for that reason as well. Hey, don't forget, same promo for Rocky, just different website. Sportsmemo.com is where you're going to get his best bets this weekend in NASCAR. He went 7-3 for free last week on Twitter at Rocketman Sports. You saw what he could do. You saw what he could do last year. Just a complete monster in NASCAR here on the show and with his best bets. He will have his first official best bets this weekend when the head-to-head odds are available everywhere so that you can lock in and get the best numbers. Sportsmemo.com for Rocky Atkinson, and you get that same bonus offer, 150% back in wager bucks that you can use on any future plays, any capper, anytime. Once again, Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com, Rocky Atkinson, SportsMemo.com for their best bets in NASCAR this weekend. When you get them, you get 150% back in wager bucks as a special thank you bonus. Once again, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a NASCAR best bet this weekend, but either way, you're covered because we have an all-sports special for myself, Steve Merril at WagerTalk.com. Fast Lane 39. You get 3 days all sports whenever you want to start it, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. This offer is good through Sunday night. You get 3 straight days of all sports whenever you start for just $39. That's every college and pro basketball play. By the way, college hoops, just a mere 43-19 this season, #1 at WagerTalk.com. College and pro hoops. And if I end up seeing some value with NASCAR when the lines come out this weekend, you get that included as well. Once again, Fast Lane 39 for myself, Steve Merril, 3 days all sports, Fast Lane 39, WagerTalk.com. Hey, guys, great information as always. The booth is telling me right now we've gotten the checkered flag, so we've officially won the show. It's done. Andy's not the only one that gets to be props to this show, I'll tell you what. By the way, Andy, should that have been a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the trophy? I'm still debating that one since it's I think you got it upside down, Andy. The trophy's upside down. It's the Ricky Stenhouse Award.
As the best Amazon could do. So.
Amazon did well. And viewers, on a serious note, let's vote for this week's winner after the race all week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at WagerTalk on Twitter, at WagerTalk on Twitter. And once again, it's Bump Sports for Andy Lang, Rocketman Sports for Rocky Atkinson, and then myself, Steve Merril, 2 R's, 1 L on Twitter. Interact with us as always, and please leave a comment below here on the YouTube video. We want to know what you're thinking. Let us know who your top 3 picks are this week. Hey, if you get it right, I'll mention your name on the show next week. Leave your top 3 picks. Whoever does the best job, I'll call them out here on the show live next week, right here on Wager Talk TV. Give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe as well so that you're notified when this is hot off the press each and every week. We're aiming for Friday nights right now so we get the best odds and information for you right here on Life in the Fast Lane. For Andy Lang, for Rocky Atkinson, I'm Steve Merril. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Best of luck this weekend on the Daytona Road Course. And be sure to tune in all week here on Wager Talk TV for more basketball and NASCAR information. Good luck this weekend.